Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show on the 27th of February, a Tuesday. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. Let's get started. Now, this was an article that came out last night. Kind of shocked me. NATO and the EU states, it says, are considering sending troops to Ukraine. It says, Prime Minister of Slovakia has claimed that NATO and EU member states are preparing to deploy troops to Ukraine. Robert Fico, a pro-Russian populist, offered no details on how Western soldiers could be sent to assist Ukraine, and commentators said he was probably just trying to stir up trouble. He was speaking ahead of a hastily arranged meeting of European leaders in Paris because of what his advisors say is an escalation in Russian aggression over the past few weeks. The meeting implies that a number of NATO and EU member states are considering that they will send their troops to Ukraine on a bilateral basis, Mr. Fico told a televised briefing following a meeting of Slovakia's Security Council. He says, I cannot say for what purpose and what they should be doing there, he said, adding that Slovakia, a member of the EU and NATO, would not be sending soldiers to Ukraine. So, that came out last night, that article. I was kind of shocked by it. But then today, another article come out. It says NATO denies plans to send troops to Ukraine. It says NATO's Secretary General has said that there is no plans to send troops to Ukraine, as Russia claimed it was ready to enter into a direct conflict with the Western military alliance should it put boots on the ground. It says that responding to remarks made by French President Emmanuel Macron the previous day, Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday denied that NATO countries were considering the possibility of sending troops to Ukraine amid the Russian invasion. And then we get this article. Evidently as a response to the article last night. It says the Kremlin warns of conflict with NATO if alliance troops fight in Ukraine. Moscow. The Kremlin warned on Tuesday that conflict between Russia and the United States-led NATO military alliance would be inevitable if European members of NATO sent troops to fight in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has triggered the worst crisis since the Russian retaliations with the West since 1962 and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah, I've been telling you guys this is as bad as the Cuban Missile Crisis. So what's going on with all of this? Could this Prime Minister of Slovakia had his ear to the ground? Is that a possibility? And the Kremlin most likely does have their ear to the ground. They're listening to all of the Western news that goes on. So this article came out, and it says NATO and EU states are considering sending troops to Ukraine. And then we hear from the Kremlin warning of a conflict with NATO if alliance troops are sent to fight in Ukraine. So, I consider this to be major saber rattling going on right now. I don't think the alliance of the West has any intention of letting Russia win Ukraine. They are committed to. So this is creating a potent situation. I'll call it a potent situation here. Very potent situation that is. You got to understand. Take a look at the entire picture. You remember back a long time ago when this war first started, years ago, when this war first started, NATO was talking about, hey, why don't we put up a air defense shield over Ukraine? They postulated that idea. And then they said, no, we better not do that because that could create World War III and a nuclear annihilation. So we're not going to put an air defense shield over Ukraine. And then they talked about sending warplanes, F-16s and stuff like that to Ukraine. And they said, no, we better not do that. That would incite the situation and maybe we would end up in World War III. But it seems like they talk about something first, and then they say, no, we won't do it because of what it could cause. And then later they end up doing it. Like long-range missiles to Ukraine. You know, oh, maybe we better, no, we better not send any long-range. And then they keep creeping in there and sending them longer and longer range missiles. So now I see them coming up with this right here about alliance troops, NATO troops fighting in Ukraine. And they say, no, I just don't know. We're going to have to wait and see how this pans out. But I'm telling you, it's like we're going down a road and we're crossing a lot of red lines, but we're getting more and more brave as we cross those red lines and move further and deeper into this situation. And it's critically dangerous. Now, I'm going to show you guys a little bit why these situations are critically dangerous and why these wars starting in the world are critically dangerous for you and your family. You might think, oh, it's halfway around the world. Oh, it's over there in Gaza, or oh, it's over there in Ukraine. It's not going to affect me personally. That's what you think. Now, the Houthis here have knocked out several undersea internet cables. Okay? It says there's new reports saying that the Houthis have knocked out several underwater telecommunications cables linking Europe and Asia. The extent of the damage remains conflicting. In other words, they don't really know the extent of the damage, but they're talking about communications between Saudi Arabia and Djibouti have been damaged in recent months, the result of Houthi sabotage. These internet cables that carry all of your internet, and it's showing a picture of some of them that run through the Red Sea here, underneath the water. There's about a dozen or more right here. They run through, more than a dozen, that run through the Red Sea there, but they're all over the earth. Let's take a look at the map of them. This is a map of all these undersea cables everywhere that's running between there's a tremendous amount of them running between like New York and London under the ocean. This is the whole network of the internet right here. This is what your internet really relies upon. Yeah, it's only a very small fraction of your internet information that travels through something like Starlink or something like that, you know, the Elon Musk's satellite system. It's only a small percentage of it. Most of all your internet runs through what you're seeing right here, these undersea cables, of which there's a lot of them. But what the Houthis are showing you here is that those undersea cables are fair game in war. You ever heard the old saying? They say, all's fair in love and war. Well, when war really breaks out full scale, like if we were to see a World War III situation breaks out, all these internet cables here would be fair game. And in fact, these countries have already practiced at cutting them. They've already trained their troops how to cut them. Just like they cut that pipeline and that natural gas pipeline, the Nord Stream or whatever, you know? Remember how easily they are able to cut something like that? Especially a cable. It's nothing to cut a cable. Even the Houthis can do it, for crying out loud. And this is going to be fair game. And what'll happen is how in North America are we going to survive if all of your cell phones and all of your internet ceases to function all of a sudden and it ain't coming back? Because how long would it take if they cut? See, listen guys, looking at this map, if they cut one or two cables, it's not really a big deal. They do what's called rerouting. They carry the information through other existing cables. It's called rerouting. But when they go in and they snip them all, how long is that going to take to repair? First off, I think it could take months, if not Oh my goodness, just forget about it. It'd just be too long it would take if they cut them all. And countries are not just there to cut them all once. If you get them repaired, they'll cut them again. If you're at war, World War III. What we're talking about is an attack on infrastructure and telecommunications here. And we're not talking about EMPs. But then all of a sudden, hey, I bring that subject in. And that's a subject for another discussion, the EMPs as well. So your vulnerability in this situation, the biggest vulnerability is telecommunications, which we've totally put our reliance on. Now, going back to World War II, we were hardened. Our telecommunications were hardened. In order to cut telecommunications in the United States back in the World War II era, you would have had to invade the country and cut the copper cables that ran through the telephone lines, which would have been nearly impossible to do because the United States is a well-defended country. We got oceans on both sides of us, and there's so many armed citizens that there's an armed citizen behind every blade of grass. So we were so hardened in World War II to having our telecommunications cut. Our newspaper network was part of our telecommunications back in World War II, along with the telephone. And like I say, that they were all on the telephone lines in the United States, strung as copper cables, and you would have had to cut those cables. Would have been all. But now what we've done is we've created this massive vulnerability by stretching all these undersea cables into the ocean, offshore, way offshore. They don't have to land in America to cut our telecommunications. They can be in the middle of the ocean cutting our telecommunications, and we don't even know they're doing it until our telecommunications are gone. And then how do we survive? We've also created a situation where back in World War II, we were hardened for survival. So there was so many people lived out in the country, and they all had small farms and stuff, you know. And they ran those farms. A lot of people still back in 1940 still ran their farms the old-fashioned way, with a plow or a horse-drawn plow. That's hardened. You can't do anything to stop that. But now we've switched everything over to this vulnerability, a system that's totally vulnerable for our food supply, just-in-time delivery, etc. I could go on and on and on. I've done a lot of shows where I've went on and on and on. This is a recipe for disaster, simply put. Now, moving on to other news. Italian TV now is openly mocking the President of the United States. This Italian TV now openly mocks our not-so-beloved Joe Biden, it says. And I watched this. It was very interesting. He's an actor, obviously, but he does look something like Joe Biden. And he comes out on there, and he must be a comedian, and he does his comedy skit where he acts all like, well, you know how he acts. Anyway, and in the end, he kind of opens up a briefcase and he pushes a big red button, and that ends it with the world blowing up at the end. He asks for his pills or whatever. Where's my pills? Where's the nurse? And then he pushes the big red button for no apparent reason in the comedy skit. You can watch it yourself if you want. But it was interesting to say the least. And this isn't the only occasion this is happening. I watched another one that was produced from another country. It was a comedy skit as well. Now, I wanted to talk about this. At the time this was written, thousands of years ago, it was not relevant. What was said here was not relevant. Thousands of years ago, in fact, nobody had the power to destroy the earth up until around 1950s. You know, after when they started to mass produce the nuclear weapons, that's when they first obtained the power to destroy the earth. And to me, this was kind of an unthinkable thought before that time. So if you went back to, say, the 1800s or 1700s and you said to somebody about them destroying the Earth, people would say, what in the heck are you talking about? How on earth could you destroy the Earth? It's like science fiction. But if we go back to biblical times, and all there's thousands of years ago, I found this interesting, what it said here in Revelations 11:18. It says, the nations were enraged, sort of like they are at wartime. And it's talking about God. It says, and your wrath has come. In other words, God's wrath has come. The time to judge the dead and to reward your servants, the prophets, as well as the saints and those who fear your name, both small and great, and to destroy those who destroy the earth. What? How could somebody thousands of years ago even conceive of that concept? That would be like conceiving of the concept of a cellular phone. Somebody thousands of years ago saying, in the future they will have these little square boxes with a flat, smooth side on one side, and they'll be able to talk to other people halfway around the earth. How would you know that information? How would this information be obtained? And where it says, and to destroy those who destroy the earth. I'm like, what? That's something to think about right there. Let's move on. Let's take a look at the markets now. Precious metals. Silver today. $22.49 for silver. It's down 2 pennies. I think that they're going to lose control over this. I can't see any other way around it. But they've been able to keep this control for a lot longer than I ever thought they could. Gold price today, $20.33. It's up $3.10. So whenever you see that, whenever you see silver moving down, gold moving up, that is even increasing that ratio even further. So we go from like 80 to 1 to 90 to 1 to 100 to 1. It's way off from where it should be right now. And this is all part and parcel due to the manipulation. That's what it is. Taking a look at cryptocurrency today. 57,165. Bitcoin has been on a tremendous tear. It is amazing how Bitcoin is moving right now at 57,173 right now. Ethereum 32.55 and XRP is at 56.5 cents. So XRP is finally starting to move a little bit. XRP was constipated, but Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're leading the charge, and you'll see the altcoins will catch up. And I consider XRP an altcoin. But all the altcoins are going to move up along with Bitcoin as Bitcoin starts to continue to charge forward. It's like a circus tent, you know. Big 3-ring circus tent. Bitcoin is the main center pole. And when you raise the tent on that center pole, all the rest of the tent comes up with it. And that's the way with it. It's like a 3-ring circus, this is. Anyway, let's move on. Take a look at the Dow Jones today. And it's down 132 points on the day at 38,936. Taking a look at crude oil, 78.27. It's up 69 cents on the day. Bonds and rates. Taking a look at the U.S. 30-year today, we're at 4.41, and we're down 0.1%. And and the 10-year is at 4.29, and it's down 0.6 basis point. And taking a look at the dollar index to finish the day is at 103.85. So the dollar index, you know, if it was being compared to something like gold or Bitcoin or something like that, but it's being compared against a basket of other currencies that are all in the same boat. They're all fiat currencies. And so that's why the dollar index can stay stable even though the dollar's losing its purchasing power very rapidly. The dollar can still stay stable on the US dollar index. I'm not saying the dollar index is meaningless, but I'm just saying it's being compared against a basket of other defunct fiat currencies. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Appreciate my audience out there. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.